Hey everyone, my name is Monet Warren and welcome back to the Diary of a Single Woman. Today we are wrapping up our Daddy Issues series with part 4, Healing and Moving Beyond Daddy Issues. I am super excited to be talking about healing and moving beyond daddy issues because this has just been a really heavy topic. For me, after every recording, it's been really, funky because I've been grappling with something that plagued me for a large, chunk of my life. And so it's expected that sometimes some feelings will come up. So I am excited to finally be talking about the light at the end of the tunnel. It is possible to heal and move beyond your daddy issues. You don't have to stay stuck. And one thing that I do want to throw out there is that you do not have to wait for the apology from your father. You don't have to wait for recognition from your father to move beyond daddy issues. It's not a prerequisite to healing. For some women, your father may have passed, or you may not know who your father is, or you may have a father who just does not feel as though he did anything wrong. And, they may not be able to provide you with an apology, and that is okay. Coming from someone who I have received recognition from my father, and I received that apology from my father, and while it was the catalyst to our healing and restoring our relationship with each other, it really did not do any significant damage control to what had been done as a result. Because remember, our fathers, they plant the seeds, and then the relationships and the experience that we have thereafter are what water those daddy issues and make them life issues, right? And so you don't have to have the apology. It's not necessary. It's nice, but it's not necessary. I just want to jump right in and talk about healing and moving beyond daddy issues. When I think about the process of emotional healing and healing from my daddy issues, the process of emotional healing is almost identical to the process of, the physical healing. So, for example, if I were to break my arm, and forgive me if I misspeak, I've never broken anything aside from my fingernail. But, when someone breaks a bone, it's, goes in a cast first, right? To protect it from any other things that could injure it further. Then once it comes out of the cast, you got to go through some physical therapy. You got to make sure your robot still functions. And then once you go through the physical therapy, the cast comes off, and then you proceed with caution, right? You don't immediately thrust yourself into extreme arm sports, whatever those are, right? You move like you just had an injured limb. Sometimes you'll be in like one of those, what are they called? Slings. It's the same way. Like when I think about my process of healing, it's been very much so the same. At some point, I realized that I had to take a step from relationships. I had to, put my heart into a cast because I was allowing relationships to recreate the same dysfunction that I had experienced in the relationship with my father. I spent, I think I spoke about it in a couple videos where I was constantly seeking that validation from men that I did not receive from my father. So my heart needed to be in a cast. I needed to stop doing that. The next thing I needed to do is I needed to go through some physical therapy. I needed to relearn or learn, I should say, what it looks like to give and experience love from a man, from a healthier place, right? Because I was operating from this dysfunctional lens that I had attained from my father, loving my father, and I now needed to recreate a more healthier version of what love looked and felt like, right? And so once I went through those processes, I then became in the stage where I am now, where I am moving forward with caution. I'm moving forward like I once upon a time had daddy issues. I didn't thrust myself into a relationship that would land me right back into a cast, right? Because how did I get in a cast to begin with? My father was the one who initially, had kind of like bent my heart, but then I got into relationships with people who kind of exacerbated some of the insecurities that I learned in the relationship with my father, and that's what ultimately broke it. So I'm not in a rush to just rush back into those same situations that rendered me heartbroken, right? That just reinforced my daddy issues, and that is what my healing process has got to look like from now until forever. Yeah, I recognize that now until forever may seem just a little bit extreme, but that's coming from a woman who I cannot say that I'm never triggered, that I don't have my moments where, daddy issues may come up, because I still do from time to time, but I now know how to recognize those. It's because I went through physical therapy, right? And that's why the physical therapy piece of moving beyond daddy issues is so crucial, because it's how you learn how to continue to exist with that injured heart and eventually heal, right? It's where you establish your boundaries. It's where you learn to establish your boundaries. It's where you discover that you cannot exist in relationships that recreate the same dysfunction that you experienced with your father. It's where you learn how to set those boundaries. It's where you learn how to say to a potential mate or to one of your friends, or to a colleague, hey, this is my stuff and I kind of need you to exist in this way so that we can have this healthy relationship, right? If you never learn what your tics are, and you can never learn how to manage them, and it's in physical therapy where that sort of work occurs. You cannot be with someone, you cannot be in friendships that do not allow you the space to heal, right? You have got to be in situations that are conducive to your continued healing. So if you find yourself in a romantic relationship, in a work relationship, in a friendship where you constantly find yourself going back to that dark place, going back to that thing or that behavior that rendered you broken to begin with, then that's a clear indication that that is not the relationship or situation or job for you. You have got to exist in spaces where you can continue to heal, because it's not something that happens overnight. It's a process that happens over time, and our decisions greatly impact that. And I know I've said that before in previous videos, but it is true. In order to heal, you have to be in situations and in settings that allow you to heal, and that comes at the cost of just re-examining the different relationships that you are existing in and setting up those boundaries. I know now, my process for getting to know a man, it looks 10 times different as it did on the other side of daddy issues. There was a lot of things that I put up with back before I went through this process of healing that now I can spot a mile away and would never put up with. I know, for example, as a result of having these abandonment issues, and having these certain insecurities that I had, for me, my two love languages are words of affirmation and quality time. And when I, meet a man and, we can't come to some sort of common ground surrounding those two things, if he is completely unable and unwilling to meet those needs, then I have to keep on moving, because my peace of mind, my healing is far more valuable than just trying to hold on to some man. And to be perfectly honest, I feel as though if a man is genuine in his pursuit of me, he will try to figure out a way to honor those boundaries that I set. But if I were to stay in a relationship, that completely compromises my healing and the progress that I've made. Our healing is, is at risk when we engage in relationships with people who do not honor or do not create safe spaces for us to heal. And that's something that you want to always be thinking about as you enter in relationships, as you engage in certain conversations, as you watch certain TV shows. Is this TV show conducive to a place of healing? And it is that deep. One thing that I've noticed, and I really hope that it is a takeaway from those of you watching this video, is that my healing from my daddy issues really involved reconciliation in a lot of things that were seemingly unrelated to my relationship with my father. I've been talking about my friendships with other women, my relationships with other men, how I exist in the workplace, and it really is because my daddy issues, those early lessons, really impacted the way the rest of the world experienced Monet, right? Aside from my daddy issues, I'm a pretty awesome person. I'm pretty dope. But when those daddy issues were just, really dictating my behavior, I wasn't much fun at all. I was cynical. I didn't trust people. And so that is why I had to go back and reconcile all of these different ways that I had existed and really understand how daddy issues impacted me in each of those situations, even though they weren't necessarily, me interacting with my father. It was just me existing in those spaces as a person with daddy issues. And I had to go back and relearn how to exist in those spaces independent of my daddy issues. And I needed to be aware of how my daddy issues had impacted them in the past so that I could recognize it whenever it came up, whenever those triggers, whenever I was triggered. The other thing I want to touch on is this idea of the damaged woman. Oh my goodness. It really just grinds my gears when I hear men say that they don't want a damaged woman, or, they don't want a woman with daddy issues. And 10 times out of 10, that is coming from a damaged man, because there's no way you can go through life unscathed, right? I think a more appropriate phrase is, I don't want to date someone who is not aware of their issues, like they're not cognizant of issues, because that's a dangerous space. I can deal with someone who has issues, who knows how to really put into words what those issues are and how they impact them, because then I know, how to honor their boundaries. But someone who has these issues and just does not recognize it, that's a whole different beast that I don't want to try to challenge. So really know what your issues are and know what sort of boundaries that you need to set in place so that you can be in healthy relationships with others. You can tell people how to love you and what to expect, and so on and so forth. And the last thing that I have got to acknowledge is, because I feel like I keep talking about the healing and the freedom that I've experienced from my daddy issues, and I feel like I'm approaching it, or I'm speaking about it as something that I've done myself. And I mention it all the time that I'm a believer, and for me, Christ made all of the difference in trying to heal. Believe me, I went through a phase of trying everything other than God. I went through a phase believing, that there possibly was no God, and this is something I needed to do on my own. And I tried counseling and mindfulness and all of these other things. And although there were times where I had experienced a little bit, I've never experienced complete freedom and healing in the way that I have since inviting Christ into this process, right? I gave Christ all of my broken pieces, and I allowed him to put them back together so that I could see the masterpiece that he created. And that is my hope and prayer for anyone watching this video, is that you would just give those broken pieces to Christ and let him put you back together. So be blessed. I hope that the series Daddy Issues has been a blessing for you. And yeah, I will see you next time on the Diary of a Single Woman.